Welcome back, boxing fans, to another great show with Sean on boxing. Today, we're going to talk about Canelo and how he's moving the sport of boxing. Obviously, over the last 2, 3 days, outside of Canelo Alvarez news and Luka Doncic trade news, those have obviously been the two biggest things in sports. Outside, of course, of today, if you're an Eagles fan, I'm sure you're happy. If you're a KC fan, I'm sorry, but you did win 2 years in a row. So, you know, you can't win every year. But obviously, outside of the Super Bowl, Canelo and Luka Doncic have really been pushing the sports sort of media. So today we're going to be talking about Canelo Alvarez and how he literally pushes the sport. And we got quite a bit to talk about. So stay tuned to that. Make sure you jump in and enjoy and participate in our conversation over here. Welcome back. So, obviously, we've been having tons of conversation recently from the back and forth. Obviously, mixed information from many sources talking about how the Canelo Alvarez Bud Crawford fight was off. That obviously the Jake Paul Canelo Alvarez fight was on, and then of course Turki Al Sheikh jumping in and making an offer that Canelo just could not refuse. And so the Jake Paul Canelo Alvarez fight obviously fell through. To many hardcore boxing fans, this was a godsend and something very positive. Obviously, it's Jake Paul and Netflix and people that were behind him. It was very disappointing. Let me know in the comment section below. What do you think? Were you happy that the fight fell through, or were you disappointed? Let's see who's in the chat. Hard Recoils in. What's up, my man? For me, I've never been a big sort of proponent of these sort of kind of fights. But at the same time, I understood how big this fight would be. Obviously, Jake Paul is one of the biggest names in boxing. Whether you like it or not, that's just the reality. And so is Canelo Alvarez. So a fight between them, it would have really been a huge event. Not for boxing fans like you and me, but for casual sports fans. That would have been the ultimate sort of event, which would have obviously grabbed tons of attention. The media would have been all over it. And I think in the long run, like Manik said in an interview he just had yesterday, that Turkey sort of dropped the ball. Because in truth, if he would have embraced the fact that this fight would bring more eyes to his event in September, maybe he could have understood the significance of the fight. But because of people's arrogance and competitiveness, this is obviously something he didn't want to deal with. He's obviously been in back and forth with Jake Paul already. There's a bit of competitiveness between the two of them. And so he took this opportunity to basically squash the Jake Paul Canelo Alvarez fight. But in hindsight, I think he's kind of missing the boat on this one, because that fight would have been so big, free on Netflix. It would have brought 50 million eyes potentially to this event. And you would think many of these people would then obviously gravitate towards the Canelo Alvarez Bud Crawford fight in September. But unfortunately, he's not going to get that. And I think in truth, the September fight is going to sort of lose out because of that, right? We know, you and me, hardcore boxing fans, that Canelo and Bud Crawford is a huge event. But the reality is, boxing fans are a very small percentage of sports fans as a whole. And if they're the ones driving the sport, there's an obvious reason why the sport is not being driven to the heights that it once was, right? And that's why. To make boxing what it once was, you need casual fans, casual sports fans, and just casuals that maybe don't even follow sports really, to really be interested in the event. And unfortunately, Bud Crawford is not that kind of draw in the States and outside of the States, right? No matter if Turki Al Sheikh loves him and really wants to help get the most out of his career, hats off to Turkey. But if you want to talk about pay-per-view sales and the biggest potential cards available, I think in boxing, that is probably the biggest card we're going to get in 2025. But in truth, the card that probably should have happened and would have easily been probably the biggest card in boxing history. Floyd Mayweather fans, I'm sure, are happy it fell through, would be Canelo versus Jake Paul. And you may not like that, but it's true. Rick Porco says Canelo wants to get that weak two-time undisputed shake my head. Skull eked out a controversial win over Vladimir Shishkin, splitting up his mouthpiece. Turkey stopping that Jake Paul Canelo mess from happening. Well, Rick, be fair. It's not that Canelo wants that fight, but Turkey wants it. Bud Crawford wants it. People that want to make that Crawford event bigger want it to be for undisputed. And for that to happen, somebody has to fight William Skull, whether that's Canelo or whether that's Bud Crawford. And Crawford is not interested in fighting until that fight. He doesn't want to risk that big payday. So Canelo's the one who's going to do it. And for him, it's a good tune-up against a safety-first long boxer, which should really help him prepare for Bud Crawford. So it's not the worst thing he could do. Hardware Cole says, I don't like this fight, but would still love to see Canelo beat up Jake and shut his mouth. And that's the reality a lot of upset boxing fans like Rick are missing out on. There's a real disdain for Jake Paul, and people really want to see him get his ass beat up. And this was the perfect opportunity to witness that, because that's exactly what Canelo Alvarez was going to do. He was going to literally beat his ass, right? Did you want to see Floyd close Conor McGregor's mouth? Me, it wasn't a fight that I was enamored with, but at the same time, I understood why Floyd wanted to do it. It was the biggest potential payday available. So why wouldn't he do it? And this is similar. I didn't hate on Floyd Mayweather for chasing Conor McGregor. I wasn't a big Conor McGregor fan, so I didn't care one way or the other. The only thing I don't like about that fight is the fact that he became 50-0 by beating a guy who had made his boxing debut, right? And I would feel similar to this, Canelo versus Jake Paul. It's not breaking a record, but still having this as a legitimate fight on your resume, it is a little sus. Do you think there's a bigger fight than Canelo versus Crawford? Yeah, Jake Paul versus Canelo Alvarez. That is the biggest fight in boxing. You basically dropped the belt to fight Berlanga only to double back to Skull. Well, Rick, let's be honest. There's a reason why he fought Munguia and Berlanga. Those two fights sold. Both of them did over 500, 600,000 pay-per-view buys. William Skull fight was never going to put up those numbers, right? And mind you, now it doesn't need to be, because it's not going to be part of the PBC pay-per-view. It's going to be a fight in Saudi Arabia. So most American boxing fans are not going to be too interested in watching it anyway. It's getting paid for, so it doesn't matter if it generates money, because it doesn't have to generate money. It's more for a purpose, and that's what it's for. I still enjoy McConnor clowning the goofy TMT team and Mayweather as 15-year-old breakdancer. Yeah, the buildup was the best part of that fight by far. That was easily the best part. And the fact that people were really to jump all over Conor McGregor for racial comments that they were making. People cannot keep race and race narrative out of the conversation. But let's move forward in this conversation. So this right here shows you one of the reasons why this Canelo Alvarez, Jake Paul really was the biggest fight to make in boxing. Two of the three richest fighters in 2025 are both right there. Canelo Alvarez worth $275 million, Jake Paul worth $120 million, believe it or not, right? You put these two guys together and it is literally the biggest fight in boxing history. Is it a legitimate fight? Of course not. Is it a fight that should be for belts? Fuck no. No. There should be no undisputed titles on the line. And of course there wouldn't be, because the fight was going to happen at cruiserweight, apparently. So no belts would be on the line, except for what the WBC was obviously going to jump at to attach their name to. But this shows you why the fight was big. You notice there's no Bud Crawford on this list. There's also no Tank Davis on this list either. I'm a little surprised that actually AJ is so low on this list. I would have figured he would be above everybody except for Canelo Alvarez. But, you know, Turkey said he hoped to persuade Canelo into fighting Benavidez in the future, which means David is definitely not part of that 3-fight deal. Well, it's actually a 4-fight deal, Rick. So he could easily be part of it as number 4 or number 3, depending on what happens with Crawford. Obviously, if the Crawford fight is very competitive, we could potentially see a rematch. There was also talk about Bivol, but if Bivol loses to Beterbiev, then that's probably not a doable fight. But then Benavidez probably is, right? So there's still a possibility of that fight happening. Of course, people that are anti-Canelo, I mean, it doesn't matter. If that fight happens, they're still going to find ways to discredit Canelo. So literally, it has nothing to do with who he fights. It's just the fact that they don't like him, whether it's they want to push pro-Black American narratives or whether they just don't like Canelo because he's a ginge or whatever the situation may be. So I know this doesn't relate. I should have probably put it later in the video, but I know my man, Drunk Irishman, is going to be all over this. So which of the 4 kings was your favorite? Like, some of you guys may be too young and didn't grow up during this period of time. Obviously, I grew up during this period of time. Hagler, Hearns, Duran, and Leonard. And for me, this is a no-brainer. You know, outside of being introduced to boxing through Ali, who my dad and my grandfather loved, the guy that obviously I gravitated towards more because obviously I was much younger. And when Ali was fighting, obviously I was a little too young to really appreciate it. But the guy I could appreciate was the 1976 Olympic gold medalist who ended up winning the Olympics in Montreal, Canada. And that, of course, was Sugar Ray Leonard. I was a huge Leonard fanboy, huge Leonard fanboy. So, of course, I wanted him to beat Duran. I was super fucking upset when he ended up losing the first fight with Duran. I was super ecstatic when he came back and had the no mas, which I was able to punk Duran for years, even though now in hindsight, I'm much more of a fan of both Duran and Hagler than I was back then. I've never really been that huge of a fan of Tommy Hearns. I always felt he was a little overrated, but nonetheless, you know, obviously he was one of the 4 kings. And maybe the reason I felt he was overrated is because I was such a Leonard fan. I do realize that Leonard obviously had problems with Hearns because styles do make fights. But for me, Leonard is the guy I grew up idolizing, supporting, being a fanboy of. Obviously, I felt he totally beat Hagler in that fight. And I think he would have beat Hagler even more convincingly in the second fight if Hagler wouldn't have ducked him. I say that tongue in cheek because I don't think he ducked him. But it's disappointing that obviously that fight didn't happen, all because Hagler's ego got in the way of that fight. And a lot of the stuff that happened between these 4 guys was all about ego. All 4 of these dudes, super fucking egocentric, right? And nobody more so than fucking Leonard. Drunk Irishman says Duran. I ain't surprised. Rick says Leonard is the best of the 4. Rick says Hearns, I think, would have caused Floyd massive problems. Well, that's the reality. I mean, it's kind of unfair to talk about Hagler, even though he's not a big middleweight, but obviously he's a middleweight. So Floyd fighting him, it's a little unfair. But obviously for Duran, a lightweight, and Leonard and Hearns, you know, career welterweights, the possibility of Floyd Mayweather fighting all 3 of those guys is a real conversation. And I definitely think that all 3 beat Floyd. All 3, right? I think Duran, pressure, power, inside fighting, and skill would just beat Floyd. He would do a much better job than guys like Maidana and what's his face? Castillo did. Obviously, because he's a way better fighter than both of them. I also feel Leonard, he might have struggled a little bit with Floyd, just like he struggled with Floyd's father a little bit. But I figure over a 15 or 12, I think it would have been a 15-round fight. In the end, he would have been too much for him. He was naturally bigger, longer, faster, had more power, and I think was able to adjust in the ring much more than Floyd ever was. Maybe it just Floyd was never forced to adjust in the ring, so we never really got to see it out of him. And I agree. I think Hearns is all wrong for Floyd Mayweather, right? Styles do make fights, and I think Hearns is all wrong for him. You could not fight in the Philly shell in a defensive type of system versus Tommy Hearns, because his jab would beat the fuck out of you, and that long, powerful right hand would just chop you up, right? There'd be no way that I think that Floyd Mayweather would beat Tommy Hearns. But obviously, this is all based on opinion. Other people may feel different, but let's move forward. So here we are. Obviously, Canelo is going to face William Skull. I don't really have a problem with the fight. I understood why the fight didn't happen originally, and I talked about it. This is the problem with the IBF. The IBF consistently mandates opponents that boxing fans don't fucking know who they are. And then you wonder why these fights aren't made. Well, how can you make a fight when the sport is based on money, right? And if you're in a fight that can't generate money, yet you want fighters that are big name fighters to actually fucking participate. Why would anyone participate in a fight against an opponent nobody fucking knows that can't generate the kind of money to pay the fighter that's a star, right? Obviously, for the no-name fighters, yeah, we get why they want the fight, but you should have to actually beat guys to become a mandatory, right? My problem with Skull, who the fuck did he beat to become a number one mandatory for the IBF? He didn't beat fucking anyone. The only guy decent on his resume that he beat was Shishkin, and he was lucky to even beat him. And that was literally for the vacant title. He should have had to fight Shishkin fucking before he even became the mandatory. And maybe after he beat Shishkin, I could understand maybe him being a mandatory, but I think it probably should have been more than just one fighter. Historically, in the day, you had to beat multiple top 10 fighters to be elevated to number one, right? Unfortunately, today, it seems like you don't have to beat fucking any. And you get elevated to the top of the fucking, specifically if you're promoted in Germany, because through the IBF, I mean, fucking everyone that's promoted in Germany ends up becoming a number one mandatory, just like we're talking about here from Rick with fucking Karen, 2 opportunities against Boots, as if we needed to fucking see that. Need more credible Mandos. Karen should have needed to fight multiple title eliminators to get Boots rematch. I agree. Like, the point of fighting people is to build up your name recognition. You fight top level opponents and you beat guys people are familiar with, and then you get the same kind of fanboyism we get from a lot of these American YouTube channels that go, I don't even know who fucking Junto Nakatani fought, but you know who all these other guys in the States fought, because they're all American fighters who you watched multiple times on American channels. So because of that, you think somehow they are better. They're not better. You're just more familiar with them because you've seen them fight. Even if you've seen them get beat multiple times because they have name recognition, somehow that means more to a lot of these casual fucking fans. But the reality is that's how you build name recognition. And then you get a fight as a mandatory, and all of a sudden the fight's easy to get made because if it fucking makes money, it makes sense, right? I'm going to talk about some of the other 168-pound fighters a little later in this video, and we'll have similar examples, right? What we've always said about top divisions like 140 and others is they have so much competition. That's a great thing. These dudes should all be fighting each other, and obviously that would highlight all of them, and boxing fans would really start to appreciate them even more. But if you're sitting around waiting for other guys to get beat, hoping that you get elevated just because you're not fucking fighting, kind of the PBC way. What the fuck is that? Nobody wants that shit. Nobody. I mean, example, Liverpool, my team. Liverpool was in the FA Cup yesterday. They could have put out a strong team and blew fucking Plymouth away, but they put out a solid team, but still pretty young to rest players because they have a very busy schedule. They ended up losing to one of the biggest upsets ever in FA Cup history. 1-0 with a terrible fucking call in the box. But this is what happens. You still got to fucking fight, you know, Only then are you going to actually earn something, because anything can happen. That's why we want the fights. That's why we want Tank Davis to fight top competition. If he wins, then whew, yes, you the king. If he gets beat, he gets beat. And he shows that he's just not what people fucking made him out to be. But let's move forward. Big Dosser says Canelo is done, finished, 34 years old, 67 fights, turned pro at 15. Crawford will dance rings around him. But Big Dosser, if you've actually watched Bud Crawford recently, you know he ain't going to be dancing around fucking anyone. His legs are stiff, old. He's kind of like Tommy Hearns when he was fighting fucking Iran Barkley. He is not the same fleet-footed 140-pound fighter that he once was, who danced circles around fucking Postal. That ain't the same Bud Crawford anymore. He's much more of a older version of Duran, who's right there in front of you, making you miss, making you pay. So it's a more exciting fight. You never walk alone. Pat Mahomes went down, so anything can happen. Exactly. Bud's 38 in September and will be over a year inactive again. Exactly. These things are not going to make him at his best. Physically, he's also putting a lot of weight. He just weighed in today, and what was he? 189 pounds. So he's going to be big, strong, buff, physical against Canelo Alvarez. But that's not what he needs to beat Canelo. What he needs is what you said, fleet foot. He's got huge arm reach. If you're able to establish your jab, make Canelo fucking chase after you. Canelo's not the most active puncher. He's a counter puncher really by trade. You could beat him. And I made a video months ago saying that I think Canelo Alvarez could lose to Bud Crawford. But you still got to make the fights. Where are we? Bud's level inactivity since 2019 is mind-boggling. If Canelo, the last fighter with old school record, around 70 fights. No, you got all those Thai fighters and a lot of those other Mexican fighters. A lot of those guys still have real hyped up, busy schedules. It's just America, right? And Europe, where fighters are trying to protect their O so they can get big paydays, where obviously they haven't had that many fights. Drunk Irishman says Canelo's going to walk through him like a freight train. I don't know if that's true either. Because he doesn't throw much punches. He doesn't have a high output of shots. I think Bud Crawford, based on an active jab and combination punching with side-to-side movement, could really cause some big problems for Bud Canelo Alvarez early. But a lot of it depends on how well Canelo cuts off the ring, is able to hit him to the body, and if Bud Crawford's going to like that. Or is he going to be more of a dog, or is he going to be more of a Charlo? I expect him to be more of a dog, but in the long run, potentially that could lead to him getting knocked the fuck out. But nonetheless, I'm not upset about the William Skull fight, and we'll talk about that when we look at the 168-pound rankings from Ring Magazine. It's just, as we said, some fans are so anti-Canelo, right? It doesn't matter what he does. People are going to fucking continuously hate on him. They've been doing this literally from 154 pounds, right? Literally 154, 160, 168, 175. We've moved up 4 weight classes. And still, people are acting like somehow Canelo Alvarez hasn't done anything over that fucking period of time, even though he's become a 4-weight world champion, undisputed, the first undisputed 168-pound champion, unified titles at 160, could have become undisputed there, and would potentially be a 2-weight undisputed champion. But unfortunately, the IBF, once again, got in the way by fucking mandating a European fighter in the way of a fucking undisputed unification fight between Canelo and fucking Demetrius Andrade, boo-boo. But let's move forward. Canelo has ducked those 2 big lads at 175. Oh yes, we all know. What big lads? He fought Dimitri Bivol and got beat. So what big lads did he fight? Are you talking about the Davids? The 2 Davids? Oh my God. Yeah, okay. I mean, still, the one David only finally in 2024 actually has done anything fucking credible. And the other David still hasn't done anything credible except get beat. So, and if you're talking about better be than Bivol, Canelo fought Bivol. That's more than David Benavidez has done. And it looks like it's more than he's planning on doing. But we'll talk about that. Ironically, the man who is not upset about Canelo Alvarez fighting William Skull in May is Bud Crawford. Of course, he's super stoked because he sees the light at the end of the tunnel. If Canelo Alvarez does become a two-time undisputed champion at 168, obviously people are willing to clown and mock him for that. But the reality is, if he's able to do that, what this does, it opens up the possibility of Bud Crawford becoming a three-weight undisputed champion. And imagine, think back like 5 years ago, just five, not that long ago. Think back 5 years ago and think, would we ever see a fighter who was undisputed in three weight divisions, right? That is the kind of anomaly I don't think any of us hardcore boxing fans could ever fucking imagine happening. And Bud Crawford is literally one fight away from making that true, and potentially could still move down to 154 pounds to become a four-weight undisputed champion, which would truly be fucking mind-numbing. You talk about Clarissa Shields doing it in women's boxing, but yet she's fighting fucking 42-year-old fucking girls who with records of 5-0, the worst competition fucking in boxing history, in divisions where literally there is no champion and nobody wants the fucking belts because nobody can afford to pay sanctioning fees. So, yet then you look at Crawford and what he's doing, that it's a whole different ball game. One person is truly doing something spectacular. The other one, I mean, I can't hate on her. She's doing what she can do, but the reality is nobody fucking cares. She looked fat and fucking unattractive as she's ever looked in that fight. And we know for women's sports, sex appeal is a big thing. If you want men to support it, if you want women to support it, that's fine. But if you want men to support it, you better got something worth supporting. Canelo versus Skull fight just makes the Bud fight that more intriguing. Can Bud make history and become a three-time undisputed champion in the four-belt era? Exactly, Drunk Irishman. I mean, that's really the huge selling point. Outside of the fact that they're both pound-for-pound fighters, the fact that Bud Crawford is moving up so much in weight seems like, it's unfair and, it's not realistic. But with the fucking carrot that's dangling there, that's really the draw, right? Canelo out-aged GG and fought him when he was past his best. He's a fraud. Jake Paul will KO his ass. Well, sure he will. Sure he will. I do agree. He did duck Golovkin, and he did try to age him out a little bit. And it wasn't Canelo's fault that he got the draw in the first fight. That was all fucking American judges, right? Eastern Europeans going to America to fight American-based fighters consistently get robbed on the scorecards. Kovalev versus Ward, Lomachenko versus fucking Haney, Golovkin versus Canelo. I mean, that shit, there's a long history of it, so it's not a surprise. Salute, NPR. Bud needs that Canelo win to solidify his resume of opponents. As of now, I see no Hall of Famers on it. Well, I think Amir Khan probably is going to become a Hall of Famer. Errol Spence, with this modern era of sports, he's definitely going to be a Hall of Famer. Probably even Sean Porter, even though I don't think either one of them truly have done enough to put them on that sort of pedestal. But yeah, I mean, maybe even Gamboa, even though it's same, right? Another guy who I don't think has done enough. But this is a whole new era of sports fans and sports media. People are so fucking paid off now. I mean, I think they were always paid off, but not to the extent that they are now. An unmotivated Canelo can be upset by Skull. That's true. That's true. I mean, it's a dangerous fight. William Skull is no punk. Great amateur fucking Cuban fighter, long, right? Good legs, good boxer. I mean, it's going to be potentially a difficult fight for Canelo to track him down and get him out. But that's boxing, you know. Sean, what's up with your boy Nui ducking around? He ain't ducking nobody. Now it's Picasso the painter next. Just say you don't want to fight MJ without saying it. Well, Mule, let's be fair. Who's the guy that could have become an undisputed 122-pound champion first? Nui or MJ? You don't want to say it because then your whole narrative is blown out of the water. The guy that literally fucking ducked undisputed was MJ. He ducked the Stephen Fulton fight for a fucking extended period of time and ended up getting beat by Marlon Tapales, which is why he didn't get the Inui fight already, right? And has been inactive and is a fucking no name fucking no name who can't draw fucking shit, right? We already saw what happened when Bud Crawford on a huge Saudi Arabian card in California fought a Uzbekistani champion. Nobody fucking paid to watch that fight because nobody knows who those guys are outside of me and a few other people who follow fucking amateur boxing and are hardcores. But the majority of Americans don't fucking know who these Uzbekistani fighters are, right? So in saying that, come on, man. Nobody fucking cares about MJ. They're just using that to shit on Inui, the same way they use David Benavidez to shit on Canelo Alvarez. Picasso is his WBC mandatory, just like MJ is his WBA mandatory. So he's still fighting one of his mandatories. And he just spent all that time trying to get Goodman, who's actually two sanctioning body mandatory. It's not his fault. That dude's made of glass. And also his team are a bunch of fucking idiots. But you can say what you want. The reality is at the end of 2025, it's going to be hard for you guys to continue pushing that narrative when he fucking knocks MJ the fuck out. And the reality is, that Stephen Fulton win is looking better and better all the time now. All borderline guys. The Boxing Hall of Fame isn't prestigious like the MLB, NBA, or NFL. In truth, it should be more prestigious, right? It should be more prestigious. Boxing is older than all three of those fucking sports combined. Skull is a bigger version of Ugis. They fight exactly the same. But not taking a tune-up is mind-boggling. He don't want to risk that payday. And as Errol Spence alluded to, he may be juicing, right, as preparation for that time. You have all that extended period of time where you're not fighting, where you could be on the juice preparing for a Canelo Alvarez fight, and then, take yourself off of it before fight night so that it's not in your system. You're bigger, stronger, and better just in time to knock out Canelo Alvarez and become fucking, the best ever. TBE. I don't want to hear it, Sean. Dehaney has lost 4 times since 2019-20, and he got the Inui fight. Mule, you know why he got the fucking fight. Stop capping. He was a replacement opponent for fucking Goodman. Just like this dude he just beat fucking from Korea. Replacement opponents because of fucking Goodman. Those aren't fucking opponents that Inui was chasing. Those weren't the opponents he was fucking at the beginning of the year chalked down as opponents he was planning on fighting. Never were they. What did you think Chisora calling for Usyk, AJ, Dubois next? Well, he just said he was going to retire, so I guess that fucking didn't last long. Athletes juicing doesn't bother me. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. I agree. You never hear me hating on someone for fucking juicing because everybody in sports does it. When you have this much money on the table, man, I'd fucking start juicing tomorrow if it meant fucking I could make fucking $100,000 in 2025. $100,000 and I'd fucking be juicing like hardcore. Even if people said it's not very good for your health, that's fine. If you guarantee me $100,000 tax free this year, I'll be juicing. Now, if you chalk that up to fucking 100 million, 10 million, 1 million, fucking Christ, man. Come on. When money's on the table, people are going to do what they got to do. And they're going to say, fuck the consequences. I'm tired of the excuses you make for this guy. Mule, what fucking excuses? This guy's in his fourth division boxing, fifth division he's moved through. He just beat two unified champions to become undisputed in his second division. What excuses? You don't fucking even like fucking MJ Akhmedov. So stop the fucking cap, please. Because if you did, what you would tell him to do was go beat Marlon Tapales fucking to get revenge on the only guy that beat him in his career. But you'd rather fucking be like Eddie Hearn and use him to shit on Inouye. But you and I both know if that fight gets done, you're fucking picking Inouye to knock his ass out, and then you're going to shit on Inouye for fighting a guy who's overrated. You know it. I know it. So fucking stop the cap, please. Because everyone here in the fucking chat knows you're full of shit. Just like the majority of these people that fucking are all over David Benavidez is nuts, acting like fucking Canelo Alvarez is ducking him and his whole legacy's at risk. Yeah, okay. IBHOF needs to stop inducting 3 fighters a year and instead just induct fighters who are guaranteed Hall of Famers, even if it's just 1 fighter a year. Yeah, you got to induct people that fucking deserve to be inducted. Inouye is about to cherry pick Fulton at 126 next, and you know it. See? Now you're just fucking proving your point. So him moving up to his 5th weight division to fight a world champion is a cherry pick to you. Hold him accountable. Dude, stop. Please. First of all, we're not even talking about Inouye, so focus on the conversation and stop pushing your fucking trollism. You could take that to fucking some other channel. What's up, Machado? Welcome. So here we go. So the question of the day: do you think the winner of Canelo versus Crawford should be crowned the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in boxing? I know the drunk Irishman thinks that's Zerto Ramirez, but the rest of us that actually fucking don't have our heads up our ass, this conversation for me, obviously, whenever people make these statements, it's always fucking for a bigger point, right? They're always pushing a narrative. What they're trying to say is, I'm a big Canelo Alvarez fan, and I'm trying to justify him being pound for pound #1. Or I'm a big Bud Crawford fan, and I'm trying to fucking justify him being pound for pound #1. But there's more to these conversations than fucking black and white. Yeah, I agree with Rick. If it's Canelo, I agree. No. If it's Bud Crawford, I definitely think that puts him right in the conversation to potentially go above Usyk. And I probably would lean towards him being above Usyk at #2, Inouye at #3. And as far as Canelo, maybe I could see putting him ahead of the winner of Beterbiev and Bivol. Maybe. But I think it still kind of keeps him at #5 as far as I'm concerned. This monster Inouye hate is kind of disgusting. But these are the kind of people fucking all over YouTube, NPR, dudes like that, right? That act as if they're fucking boxing fans, but they're fucking trolls who just come to fucking stir the pot by pushing stupid bullshit narratives, right? This is unfortunately what American fucking YouTube is full of. These kind of fucking people. Not sports fans, not boxing fans, fucking fanboys, trolls, and fucking just guys that want to fucking, stir the pot. Oh yeah, sorry, I even said his weight wrong, right? But Bud weighing 196, is he still too small? Yeah, no, I think Bud is on the juice right now and is going to come in and potentially be as big, if not bigger, than fucking Canelo Alvarez. He's naturally, a taller fighter. Obviously, he's thin through his legs, thighs and ass and back are where you put on most of your weight. But he's pretty broad through his shoulders. Obviously, he's super strong, as we saw in that Errol Spence fight as well. Canelo at 4 at best. I agree, Rick. Gaming TV, what's up? Bud is calling out Canelo. Canelo didn't call out Bud out. Yeah, that's true. But that has nothing to do with pound for pound, right? If you want to talk about reality, I mean, yeah, I don't hold Canelo to criticism if he knocks out Bud Crawford and people say he's cherry picking a smaller fighter. As you said, he's not chasing that fight. That's Bud Crawford chasing the big payday. So it is what it is. But it's not really a pound for pound win if you're fighting a guy who's coming up multiple weight divisions and obviously is the smaller fighter. But I'm not going to discredit you for it either. You're not going to drop down on my list. That's why I say, 4, 5, right? Somewhere around there, I think is fair. Number one, I don't think you put him above Inui or fucking uh, Usyk for beating Bud Crawford. Bud Crawford obviously falls just because he gets beat. That's crazy. 196 snack. Yeah, yeah. And people will get in their feelings. I'm sure John Boxing, if he hears we're alluding to the fact that Bud Crawford may be using PEDs, is going to get in his feelings. But the reality is, there's all kinds of black YouTubers that said the same thing fucking for years about all snack fighters. So it's not it's nothing new, right? And as far as boxers and athletes using PEDs, it also is nothing new. It just is what it is. People cheat, right, to get an advantage because there's millions of dollars on the table. You gave Loma credit for beating Rigo. See, once again, Mule, you're a liar. No. I mean, it's a good win for Lomachenko's resume, but I never fucking got on my soapbox and made a big deal about it. The biggest thing I point out was the Rigo fucking fanboys or the Lomachenko haters who fucking were talking about how Rigo was going to school him because he was way better boxer on a whole nother level, how he's going to break Lomachenko's jaw, and all of these narratives, guys like Fannin and Ego and Dante and all of these people were pushing on their channels. So I made fun of them because they're douchebags. As far as hyping up the win for Loma, I never did. What I did is I said it's comparable to Golovkin beating Kell Brook. It's comparable to Spence beating fucking Mikey Garcia. It's comparable to Canelo beating fucking Amir Khan. All good wins, but how much credit can you really give those guys for fighting smaller guys coming up in weight? I'm consistent. I didn't fucking overblown Lomachenko's win. Not at all. Not at all. Two weight classes, so why not push for Tank and Nui at 130? Why not push for fucking Tank versus Bud Crawford at 147, Mule? See, we know what you are. You're fucking a PBC fanboy type of fucking troll who's going to continuously come here hating on the same fucking type of fighters consistently that, all those guys do. All the fucking man fucking defend other ones. You're fucking easy to digest. Crawford showed his weight was 186, not 196. Yeah, that's what I thought. It was 186. You sound like a woman. LDBC were tearing down Donaire when he fought Rigo, yet now they are Team Donaire. Yeah, because his wife does fucking interviews with him all the time, which I can't fucking believe she does. Hard Recoil, you are that GGG bum. Oh my God. Yes. GG's a bum, but who do you support, Mule? Errol Spence got knocked fucking out. Deontay Wilder got knocked the fuck out. Every fucking PBC fighter you supported fucking is history. The two Charlos, fucking history. The only guy you got left is fucking Tank Davis. And if he ever steps up and faces somebody legitimate, chances are he's going to get fucking beat too. And then literally you're going to have nobody anymore to fucking dick ride for from the PBC fucking stable. Man, that must really fucking keep you up at nights. Yes, Drunk Irishman. Rest in peace, John Cooney. I'm not familiar with him, but it's obviously sad whenever we see a fighter, especially a young guy, pass away. So rest in peace, young man. Exactly, Mule. Why not tank to fight Crawford and finally fight someone? Exactly. I mean, he's beefing with Crawford. That fight would do huge numbers, right? Move up to 147. Crawford said he'd come down to 147 from 154. Fight him there. That would be your what? Fourth weight division. You would finally go up the same amount of weight divisions that fucking Anui's went up, even though Anui's went up 5 weight divisions. He just skipped over one and didn't fight in that division, but up 5 divisions. Tank would be up 4. Boxing's more dangerous than MMA. That's true. That's true. Canelo ducks fucking Jake Paul. For Jake Paul, It'll be interesting to see who he fights next. I've heard a rumor, and maybe Drunk Irishman has more idea on this, that potentially he's going to fight Carl Froch. And I think that's a fucking hell of a fight. That's a hell of a fight. If he gets the balls to fucking step in the ring with Carl Froch and take on Froch at cruiserweight right now, obviously he's physically bigger than Froch, but Froch is a fucking legitimate fighter, right? That fight would be good. And obviously for the American boxing fan, it's not the kind of name that really sells that much. But obviously the UK fans would be all over it. So you got American fans because of Jake Paul. You got UK fans because of Carl Froch. I mean, obviously that would do big numbers. That's the one I think they should do for sure. Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez always made sense. They actually fought on the same card. That's a no-brainer. A no-brainer. Mexican-American boxing fans would support it. It obviously makes a lot of sense in America. That shit, that's what he should do, right? And you know, the reality is, you know, that guy is fucking mentally fucking not fully fucking there. So it's probably also the easiest, probably most winnable fight. You beat him, and you can literally say you've beaten a fucking professional fighter who is a world champion, right? And now the possibility of fighting Canelo makes even more sense down the road because you both beat fucking Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Where are we? Hard recoil. Maybe Tank can bring up another opponent like GG did with Brooke. Well, no. Tank Davis has brought up way more opponents in weight than Golovkin ever did. I mean, he brought guys up 2 weight divisions. He brought multiple guys up from 1 weight division. Guys literally coming off of losses. Cuellar was coming off of a loss to Abner Morris when he moved up and faced him. So, you know, stop. We know why Golovkin fought Kell Brook, because Chris Eubank lost his fucking pen. So Eddie Hearn wanted to continue the fucking fight card that he was promoting with one of his fighters involved, because financially that's how he's going to make money. So they put Kell Brook into that fight. Unfortunately for Kell Brook, but obviously for Golovkin and Eddie Hearn, it was a wise maneuver. Canelo fighting Skull is a tune-up preparation for Crawford. Normally, I don't think Canelo would fight that guy. Yeah, I agree. No point for a conversation with you, emotional casual. That's what he is. Brooke was a replacement for GG Mule. Yes, he was. Hard recoil, typical. Right? You can't have a conversation with a normal person that's fucking brain dead. So we'll just ban you and get you out of here, because there's no point having anyone here that's just full of shit and just trying to stir the pot and can't fucking have a real conversation. You can listen, but as far as your conversation, nobody's fucking interested in. Jake did say the fight this year will be bigger than Canelo versus Bud. Only fight that I can see that can be that big is the McGregor fight. That would also be a huge fight, right? McGregor versus fucking Jake Paul, right? So he's still got a few possibilities. KSI, McGregor, Chavez. I do think the Carl Froch fight is less because obviously he's really just a name in the UK. But McGregor and fucking Paul, that fight makes tons of sense. Tons of sense. So here we go. Ring Magazine just put out their rankings. So I focused on their top 6, or sorry, top 5. Obviously, Canelo Alvarez is number 1. And then you have Christian Mbili at number 2. I mean, most of us, I'm sure, love watching Mbili fight. Mbili's a great fighter. I said I would have loved to see a Canelo Alvarez versus Christian Mbili fight. Stylistically, it would be a super exciting fight. Kind of like Berlanga, kind of like Munguia, right? Similar type of opponents. Aggressive, come forward fighters, right? Making very entertaining fights. The difference with Mbili is he doesn't have the fan base that Munguia or Berlanga has. He's a French Cameroonian fighter fighting out of Canada, right? So he doesn't have big fan base behind him. Obviously, for him, I was hoping he'd fight William Skull to get that IBF title, and now him fighting Canelo Alvarez for undisputed would be would be something really interesting and worth watching. But it's not a big money fight, right? What Billy's got to do is fight the other top guys in the division to build up his name recognition, right? And whether that's David Benavidez or fucking whoever, like a guy like him has to actually fight multiple name opponents to build up his name to make a fight interesting and intriguing for boxing fans. Even though he's number one, Andrew Tate versus Jake Paul sells. That's true, but not as much as obviously McGregor. Jake Paul, I mean, Andrew Tate's a name people know, but a lot of people don't really know him that much. Jay Perez, what's up? I thought Canelo beat Berlanga easily on autopilot. Yeah. I need to see Billy against somebody other than an old Derevchenko who had one arm from round 3. I agree. I think that Derevchenko could have beat him if he would have been fully healthy. Because while I like Christian Billy, I do think he's pretty one-dimensional and limited. At number 2, we have Diego Pacheco. In truth, I think Diego Pacheco is the best fighter in the division. And obviously, he's the guy that makes the most sense for Canelo Alvarez. But he also needs a few more fights really to make that fight that people would really be pushing for and really interested in. And obviously, after the 4-fight deal with Saudi Arabia and Turkey Al Sheikh, then Diego probably should be right there as potentially Canelo Alvarez's 5th fight, right? You know, depending on what promotional company is involved. Maybe he'll be the 4th fight for Turkey Al Sheikh. But similarly, he's got to fight somebody. I know there's conversation about him versus Berlanga. I would love to see Diego Pacheco versus Berlanga. That would be a great fight. I think he beats the shit out of Berlanga. And if he does it convincingly, more so than Canelo, it only helps to hype that fight up even more. But I definitely think he's a good fighter. He's super young, fucking has all the tools. Definitely think he's got the best upside out of all of them. Rick says, Iglesias has a main event in Canada. I think he was on Billy's undercard. That could be a good matchup. That would be a great matchup. But once again, it's kind of a shame, right? Because nobody knows who Iglesias is. He's a Cuban fighting in Germany, just like William Skull. And then fucking Billy is a French Cameroonian fighting in Canada. Right? You know, hardcore boxing fans like you and me, we fucking appreciate these fights. And hopefully Turkey Al Sheikh appreciates them, because with his money, these are the kind of fights he could easily put on top undercards, right? And really make you and me super happy to watch guys like fucking Iglesias and Billy fight. See who Billy's fighting next. He's already fucking scheduled to fight Sergio, his French counterpart. That, my friends, is one of the most underrated fights in 2025. Fucking Billy versus Sergio. 2 French fucking come forward bombers. Ooh, man, that fight's going to be very, very entertaining. It's going to remind me of when I watched Tua versus fucking, what's his face? Ike Iabuchi. One of the best heavyweight matchups ever. You know, this one could be similar. But yeah, obviously at number 3, you have Iglesias, who is a great fighter and super skilled. Obviously, you know, he's very similar, I think, to David Morrell, right? Very skilled fighter, boxer, puncher. But we got to see these guys in with better opponents. Because right now, if Canelo fights any one of these 3, he's not going to get much credit. Haters are going to hate, right? You know, the only way to really make these fights intriguing is for these guys to actually fight each other. And then the winner obviously moves up a peg and becomes that much more of a potential opponent for Canelo Alvarez moving forward, right? And then we have a name opponent next in Caleb Plant at number 4. I mean, if William Skull, Pacheco, right? Or sorry, not Skull, Iglesias or Billy beat Caleb Plant. Right there, they fucking solidified themselves as legitimate title contenders for Canelo Alvarez's resume, right? Caleb Plant, obviously, coming off of 2 losses, 1 stoppage loss to Canelo, a loss where he probably should have had the fight stopped against Benavidez because he was just fucking holding on to survive at the end of that fight. But yeah, you know, I like him. He's a good fighter, but the problem with him, he lacks the power to really grab people's attention. Different than obviously the 3 guys ranked above him. Iglesias, Pacheco, and Mbili all fucking have that power, which we know sells, right? The ability to fucking flatline a dude grabs fucking casual boxing fans and hardcore boxing fans' attention, which is why the most popular fighters in boxing today primarily are all fucking knockout punchers, right? You know, why guys like Shakur and Devin Haney aren't really fan favorites. You know, some people may try to push them and act like they're big fans, but you know, they're mostly capping. They're just Floyd Mayweather fans that fucking, you know, want to push skills pays the bills. Where are we? Canelo was well conditioned and very sharp against Charlo. That most recent version of Canelo beats Crawford. Rick says, I wish Janabek would move up to 168 instead of fighting guys like, yeah, I can't even pronounce that guy's name, at 160. Well, to be fair, I think what Janabek is doing is waiting, biding his time, because I do see that the potential fight between him and soon to be WBC champion, you know, what's his face? Why can't I think of his name? Shamzid. Fuck, man. He just escapes my brain. Shiraz, there you go. Fucking Shiraz. The fight between Shiraz and Janabek, right? That's a great fight. Unification, 2 very good fighters. Obviously, Hamza Shiraz, thank you very much. And we know Saudi Arabia is going to pay for that. So, you know, he's not stupid. He knows he just need to keep his 2 titles, fight dudes like this, and then when he gets that Hamza Shiraz fight, it's going to be worth everything, right? And if he beats Hamza Shiraz, you know, he won't be a star, but there'll be more paydays flowing to his pockets, whether that's moving up to take on Canelo Alvarez at 168, which fucking is very viable, right? Think about it. He beats Shiraz, becomes a 3-belt unified champion, right? Looks stellar in Saudi Arabia. You know, the possibility of him then being an opponent at 168 for Canelo definitely increases and goes up, 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 up. I'm really not that excited for Canelo Crawford. I think it's an easy fight for Canelo, and I love Crawford, but I don't think he really has a chance. I'm curious on how Big Turkey is paying Canelo for a fight deal. I'm sure it's big money, but as Turkey himself said, he did not outbid Jake Paul, right? The offer that he was offered to fight Jake Paul on Netflix is bigger than the money he was given in his first fight for Saudi Arabia, right? Bigger. Because what I heard was he was offered $100 million to fight Jake Paul on Netflix. Because Netflix knows that would fucking be probably bigger than the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight. It would have been huge. And for Netflix, I mean, obviously you want a fight of that magnitude because look how much attention that fucking Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight got, right? Like it blew up the internet, literally blew up the internet. I've never heard people complain about not being able to get access to Netflix except for that event, right? So that tells you everything you need to know. Do you think the ring title will be on the line for the Janabek Shiraz fight? For sure, it has to be. You're gonna fucking let Laura get in the way of that? Like, Laura, I mean, come on. Canelo fighting in Saudi 3 times is crazy. It is crazy that 3 of the fights are going to be in Saudi Arabia, right? I figured 2 of them would be there. I figured maybe number 2 and number 4 would be in the US. Number 1 and number 3 would be in Saudi Arabia. You do this guy, Skull in Saudi Arabia, because why not? It's not going to sell in America anyway. Then obviously the the Bud Crawford fight is going to be in Vegas, and then you fight potentially the winner of whoever, Bivol if he beats Better Biev, or potentially Better Biev. I mean, Better Biev Canelo. I mean, for me, that's a far more interesting fight. I'd be way more interested in seeing Canelo Alvarez fight Artur Better Biev than to rematch fucking Bivol. Because I think stylistically it's a way more exciting fight. And yeah, maybe he gets stopped in that fight. Or maybe he stops fucking Better Biev. Better Biev has been dropped before. And Canelo, I think, is better than any of the guys that dropped him before. So, I think that fight is super exciting. And then obviously the fourth fight, depending on who you're going to fight, right? I guess it depends. If it was like Diego Pacheco, you should do that fight in the States. Won't Canelo Bud be in America? Yeah, it's going to be in Vegas. Yeah, Turkey was talking about it and said, yeah, that fight has to be in the US. I don't want to take big fights away from the American market. And even, is it the February 22nd card? Isn't it going to be showcased American time? So, which is perfect for me. It's going to be Sunday morning in Taiwan, which means I don't have to wake up Saturday night and watch it all night. So I thought I heard that, but correct me if I'm wrong. Bivol versus Canelo isn't competitive. Yeah, I think stylistically, right, it's just a difficult matchup for Canelo Alvarez. As we know, that's why people give Bud Crawford a chance of beating him. Because if you can use your feet and establish your jab, you potentially could outbox Canelo Alvarez. I thought Bivol beat Canelo 10-2 clear. If Canelo can fight all light heavyweights, why not Crawford fight Canelo? Because it's 2 weight class jump. Well, to be fair, Bud Crawford came from 135 up to 168. So I don't know, do the math. It's similar. I mean, obviously when Canelo fights at 175, his best weight is 160, and to be fair. So he is fighting 2 weight classes above really what is probably the weight he should be at. If he would have been maneuvered probably more like most guys are maneuvered nowadays, he probably never would have went up to 168. He would have drained himself at 160 to be stronger and more physically dominant at that weight class. But, and then we got William Skull at number 5. So, not bad. He already beat Caleb Plant, knocked his ass out. Now he's going to fight William Skull next. I can't say it's a fight that I'm super excited about, but it's going to be a solid undercard as well, right? So even if you're not excited about the Canelo Alvarez William Skull fight, probably the next 3-4 fights under that card are going to be more than good enough to make up for it. I'm pretty much guaranteeing that. Do we still know who's on Tank Davis's undercard? Has that officially been announced yet? Because every time I was looking, I never could see it. Because I'm like, well, that's not the best card, but maybe the undercard is going to be real fucking good. Which for the PBC, not always. Will Bud be tested by VADA? I'm not sure. Gary, yeah, I know that one. Even though every time I look, they still don't list it. Or at least last time I looked. But let me look again. Because if you want to really hype this shit up, man, you should fucking have these fights announced and on BoxRec. Okay. So we got Valenzuela, Gary Russell, Puello, Martin, Tellez versus Julian Williams. Hopefully there's more. Tellez looks like a real good fighter. I think he's going to fucking beat Julian Williams' ass. But of course, another Cuban, right? PBC using Cubans to build their stable, that is not a fucking success story. It never has been. Puello Martin, potentially one of the most boring fights potentially in boxing history. That fight could almost be as bad as Bartholomew versus Robert Easter. You guys remember that fight? Bartholomew versus Robert Easter? Man, that shit was fucking boring as fuck. Boring. Valenzuela versus Gary Antoine Russell. That should be an interesting fight. I think Valenzuela could beat Gary Russell the same way he was just beat. Similar style, right? It's just a matter if he's able to do it. Question is Gary Russell going to be able to utilize his power? Martin fucking Puelo. If Gary wins, I bet Tank calls him out for a DMV showdown. Hey, I'd be excited to watch Tank Davis fight Gary. The problem is, what is he going to fucking drain Gary down to 135? Because Gary's never fought at 135. He's a 140 fighter. So that fight only makes sense if Tank Davis fights him at 140 for the title. DMV is the area. Both grew up, FYI. I remember everyone thinking Canelo was crazy considering fighting Kovalev back when he was at 160. And then they still give him no credit for beating him. Oh, Kovalev was shot. Oh, Kovalev just beat fucking Anthony Yard. Anthony Yard, who really gave Better BF probably the best fight of his career, right? Anthony Yard, you know, only because he challenged himself against fucking really good fighters, he never became a champion. I like this undercard, but Keyshawn Branchek. Yeah, I mean, Top Rank always does great cards, especially with young up and coming fighters, right? And obviously that fight's coming up this weekend, so that's going to be super exciting. Oh, what is it? My oh, I got killed this week in fucking the prediction league. Jesus Christ, man, got killed. But who's fighting this weekend? So Branchek, Keyshawn Davis. Look for Keyshawn to fucking make a statement. Zayas versus Spoomer, undefeated fighter, 20-0, 11 KOs. Obviously, Xander Zayas is just continuing to stay busy. Jared Anderson coming back against a guy I've never heard of, but he did just get knocked the fuck out. Vito Melanicki Jr., fuck, I hate that guy, but at least he's fighting okay opponent in Connor Coyle, 21-0 with 9 KOs. A good fighter, Rohan Polanco, good up-and-coming young fighter, welterweight fighter, 14-0, 9 KOs, is fighting a guy I've never heard of. Abdullah Mason, back in the grind, fighting Manuel James. Delante Johnson, back in the grind against Kwao Shan Tolar. Good record, 17-3, 12 KOs. Also that weekend, what else? Jack Catterall and Arnold Barboza are fighting. Also a fight that potentially could fucking be boring as fuck, but a great fight. And the winner should get that 140-pound WBO title. Reese Bellotti back in the ring. Whatever happened to him? Zalfer Barrett. This is like the reject card from the UK. Zalfer Barrett and fucking Reese Bellotti with Jazza Dickens. Fucking Christ. Only fucking UK boxing fans could love that card. But I do like the next fight. Pat fucking McCormick, UK fucking Olympian, 6-0, 4 KOs, is fighting Robert Davies Jr. Man, that's a big step up fight. That's a real good opponent for McCormick. I mean, I think McCormick has been, I don't know if he's been injured. You let me know, Drunk Irishman, what's been going on with him. He hasn't fought nearly as much as he should, right? But at least now he's finally stepping up and taking on a legitimate fucking opponent. I think he's going to beat him, obviously, but that's the kind of fight we've been waiting for him to get into. Rashidi Ellis is getting back in, so John Boxing is super excited. He loves Rashidi. Rashidi is better than fucking Boots Ennis. He's fighting a guy who is 16-9. That pretty much tells you everything you need to know. He's fighting a guy who's 16-9. So, while John thinks he's better than Boots Ennis, nobody on his team feels that way. Oscar Duarte, unfortunate that fight between him and Prograis fell through, which is disappointing. That fight could have been great. But now he's going to fight Miguel Meduno, the guy that Keyshawn Davis fought. And that fight was a great fight. Meduno's a rough, rugged, dirty fucking motherfucker. Him and Oscar Duarte fighting, whew, that should be a knockdown, kick you in your nuts, pull out your hair, bite your fucking ear type of event. Darius Fulgrim, good young up and coming super middleweight, 13-0, 11 KOs is fighting. Ricardo Saldivar, Kenneth Sims Jr. against Kendo Castenda. That's a good fight as well. Kenneth Sims Jr. definitely deserves opportunities to fight. He's a lot hard done by boxing promoters and judges. But yeah, I'm excited. This weekend is obviously we're getting back to the grind. And then next weekend, Saudi Arabia, best card in fucking boxing history. And obviously we'll be going live next week talking more about it. So jump in and make sure you participate. Unless your name is Mule, and then you can go fuck yourself. I heard Joey Spencer versus Tim Tszyu is on the Tank undercard. See, that would be a good little bounce back fight for Tim Tszyu against Joey Spencer, right? I think that's a good fight. They should totally put that on the undercard of Tank Davis. And for Tim Tszyu, he deserves an opportunity because they totally fucking railroaded him. But I don't know why Tim Tszyu is so happy to be fucked over by the PBC. He could go fight fucking, who's that guy? The Australian fighter that got knocked out by fucking Lara. He could go fight him down under as the headline fight on a card, make more money on that fight, fighting that dude in what is a hate fight between the two of them with his brother on the undercard. You know, that fight makes way more sense to me, but he just does not want to fucking give that guy a payday, right? He's going to pull out his best Canelo Alvarez fucking accent to say, payday. I know you want a payday. Funny. But yeah. So let's move forward. One step forward, two steps back. So I heard some interesting news, and actually I heard it from Fannin. And, you know, Fannin is so full of shit. You can't believe anything that guy says. But he made a point that actually made a little bit of sense, right? Especially now with Trump as the president. And that's really what made me think, oh, yeah, I could fucking totally see that. All right. We see, yeah, Zarafa. Thank you. He was talking about how, you know, Saudi Arabia made this big pool of money to support sports in Saudi Arabia, and not just international athletes, but also Saudi Arabian athletes as well, you know, amateurs and everything else. A lot of money is being put into sports programs. They're obviously getting great coaching from around the world, similar to what China has done when they pulled in all the Russian, Cuban coaches and stuff, similar to what Russia and Cuba were both doing back in the day as well. So you can see Saudi Arabia with their deep pockets is going to do something similar. And obviously they're pulling boxing and some sports away from the US market, right? And obviously we know that some Americans are upset by this. And what he was talking about is somebody, I don't think he said who, proposed the idea of the Americans doing a similar type of thing. And obviously talking with Trump, you know, they've created a new thing that's almost the exact same name of what the Saudi Arabian thing is. Don't ask me, I can't remember what it is, but basically for the same purpose, to continue to support amateur boxing and, you know, support boxing as a whole, and maybe try to use that money to generate. Of course, Fannin is using it as a way to dick ride the PBC and Al Heyman, acting as if all that money is going to go to Al Heyman's pockets and he's going to be able to disperse it. And hopefully that's not the case, because we've seen what happened the last time he was given $500 million and how nothing really concrete came from it, right? No great young boxers were developed from the PBC outside of Tank Davis, who was TMT. But you tell me, what great young fighter did the PBC develop? Tank Davis, and that's it. Right? With all that money that they had, they were unable to really build up what Top Rank does consistently, you know, the next generation of superstar fighter and world champion. But I could totally see Donald Trump doing that, because, you know, the last thing he wants to do is see Saudi Arabia taking jobs and opportunity out of America, right? So him creating this kind of fund to sort of fight Turkey al-Sheikh in Saudi Arabia, I totally fucking could see that happening. And I would not be fucking sad if that does happen, right? This would just be another reason for Americans to love Trump. But as a boxing fan who's not American, I would just be happy to see these two fucking giants spending millions and millions of dollars, billions is what really it is, uh, to fund and support amateur and professional boxing. Sign me up. I'm excited. Yay, 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 woo. Yeah. So I don't know if it's true. If anybody hears anything about it, drop me a line. Let me know. But as I say, if Fannin is talking about it, pretty much we know it's bullshit. But it did make sense to me because Donald Trump is the president, and we know how Donald thinks. Um, do you think this card could be the best in history? I heard you complain it's too good. I didn't complain it's too good. Who was I listening to? Was it also Mannix? But he made a good point. I don't think it was Mannix. I think it was another real boxing pundit. But he said, unfortunately, by doing this, a lot of the smaller fighters who don't have a lot of name recognition, they're the ones missing out. Because if you made, say, 3 cards out of this, then you would have probably 9 to 12 undercard fights, meaning you'd have 18 to 24 fighters who potentially would get an opportunity to fight on these cards, get good pay, and also get the opportunity to showcase themselves in front of a big audience. But because this card is such a super card, all those young guys aren't getting the opportunity. They're missing out on what potentially could change their lives, right? And he made a good point, and I definitely thought, yeah, that fucking totally makes sense. I agree with it totally. Um, I like British announcers the best because it sounds like a soccer broadcast, very professional, sports like. Yeah, I agree. Even some of the older guys, the Irish guys, I like them. There you go. Now you're on. Now, where's John Boxing? Hey, when Canelo destroys Bud, will you admit Mexican boxing is the best? All you Bud fanboy YouTube channels just been hating big time on Canelo for accepting the 4-fight deal. Why you mention me in that conversation? All you Bud fanboy YouTubers. When did I say anything anti Canelo Alvarez? Dude, man, I think you're on the wrong channel. Or you got me mixed up with a different channel. David Cuellar might destroy Junto. He might not get that fight versus Nio. Good luck. Cut. Huh? Cut. Huh? What are you trying to say? Hard recoil. But I thought this was interesting from Turkey Al Sheikh. These are 2 fights that he's talked about. And that's what I like about him. People are quick to criticize him, hate on him, even though he's putting money into American market and putting money into the British market. He's making fights that couldn't be made based on politics of boxing in the past. He's putting on great fucking fight cards that are huge events. And obviously, he talked about how he hopes to talk Canelo Alvarez into facing David Benavidez, which would be a great fight. Boxing fans would really be excited if that was one of the 4 fights on the Turkey deal. He also just came out with these 2 statements talking about how for Inui's 4th fight in 2025 in December, he would love it to be Junto Nakatani. As I stated, I mean, obviously, we don't want that fight to happen in Saudi Arabia, right? It's kind of like the equivalent of Bud Crawford versus Canelo. It should happen in Vegas. This should happen in Japan. If you want to talk about Paul Ball, right, the British fighter for 5th division title, that fight makes sense in Saudi. Or you want to talk about MJ, right? That fight makes sense in Saudi. But as far as Junto, doesn't make sense. But the fact that he wants to make the Junto Inui fight, that makes sense. And I'm excited about that because that's a great fight. He also came out and says that he's expressed interest in making the mega fight between Shakur and Gervonta Tank Davis. But Tank Davis has no interest in the fight. But I think if boxing fans continue to push Shakur and Tank Davis for unification, specifically because it is literally one of the biggest fights you can do in 2025, and it's a huge legacy fight for the 2 of them. It's the kind of fight that, you know, maybe Tank Davis will come around to being a little more excited about the possibility of that fight. Because if he retires and doesn't fight Shakur, more so than Lomachenko. That's just going to be a huge asterisk on his career. He already ducked Lomachenko at 130 pounds, but okay, he was young. Lomachenko was prime. So, it didn't make sense to put him in with a tough opponent at that point of his career. But at this point, there's no fucking excuse to not fight Shakur Stevenson. These are literally the two best American fighters in and around those fucking divisions. And everybody knows that, without a doubt, right? And stylistically, it's a real intriguing fight. The question is, can Tank Davis' power overcome Shakur's defensive wizardry, right? This is a historical fucking matchup and a fight that needs to happen, right? People are prone to trying to say, oh, Shakur should fight Keyshawn Davis. That you're only saying that because you're trying to fucking protect Tank Davis from fucking fighting Shakur. That's the fight that should happen. I mean, Keyshawn hasn't even won a world title yet. Why is he in the fucking conversation right now? Like, come on. But with Turkey and the push, with Ring Magazine, with the media behind him, with the sanctioning bodies, hopefully that pressure, the financial fucking incentive, hopefully that's a fight that he can get made in 2025, because that, my friends, is a fight everybody could get around. Tank fighting Shakur, highly unlikely. Turkey doesn't need to buy Tank 2 Ferraris. He needs to buy Tank a pair of balls. Don't say that. John Boxing's going to say you're a racist because you're unfair. You're pushing a double standard. Doesn't fucking Canelo Alvarez need a pair of balls to fight David Benavidez? Right? I love when people do that, but yet you're going to compare Tank Davis and what he hasn't done in his career to Canelo Alvarez and what he's already done in his career, right? Like, one guy is a 4-weight world champion, undisputed, unified in fucking 2 weight divisions. Another guy is a 2-weight world champion. John likes to say he's 3-weight world champion, but yet Golovkin didn't break Bernard Hopkins' middleweight title defense record, right? People are so fucking hypocritical. He talks about double standard, but he's the epitome of double standard. So Golovkin didn't break Bernard Hopkins' record because he only had the WBA regular title. But Tank Davis is a 3-weight world champion. These dudes are mental. But people don't mind lying. Like, literally, I think John is learning from the LDBC and the Fannons and fucking the Eagles and Dantes. You can lie. It don't matter, because nobody's going to hold you fucking accountable. And when I do hold you accountable, what do? You fucking get my channel flagged and fucking closed down from doing what? Fucking holding you accountable to fucking things you said on your channel. I didn't lie. Literally, I used his words against him and fucking humiliated him so bad, all he could do was fucking close down my channel. Like a fucking rat fink bitch. But what do you expect? What's Tank's best win? Petraza. And let's be real, that win is aging like milk. Yeah, Petraza. And at that time when he beat Petraza wasn't considered the best champion at the weight, right? This was before Lomachenko became a champion. Or was Lomachenko champion? I can't remember the time. But regardless, if Lomachenko was a champion, there was 3 other champions. And Petraza was not considered the second best, right? So, Petraza is a good fighter. But, going to that fight, everyone knew Petraza was struggling to make weight. That was the word on the street. And the fact that he moved up and became a champion at 135 and then moved up to 140 kind of reinforces that. But these are the kind of fights I would love to see Saudi Arabia, Turkey Al-Sheikh make moving forward. And speaking of fat ass motherfuckers, this tells you everything you need to know. This dude just can't not fucking cap off of Canelo Alvarez. Like, literally, this statement shows you he's fucking prone to duck undisputed light heavyweight fight because he knows he's going to get beat, whether it's against Bivol or Better BF. You could literally beat those guys, guarantee yourself almost a fucking fight with Tank Davis. You go on to beat Bivol, Better BF winner, and become undisputed light heavyweight champion. Turkey Al-Sheikh is going to be pushing Canelo Alvarez fucking hard, full steam ahead to match up with you. One reason, because Canelo, legacy wise, could become a two-weight undisputed champion after beating Bud Crawford, becoming a two-time 168-pound undisputed, then moving up and taking on David Benavidez, who beat the boogeyman, Better Biev and Bivol, right? Bivol, who already beat Canelo Alvarez. That story writes itself, right? But yet here he is talking about moving up to fucking cruiserweight because he's a fat fucking motherfucker like all these PBC dudes. They just fucking lack fucking what is it? Determination, focus, professionalism, all of it. They just lack it. They'd rather fucking, throw their careers away. Benavidez is using the PBC, my side of the street excuse to duck undisputed at 175. He doesn't want to leave Las Vegas. Yeah. You're going to make more money to go to fucking Saudi to take on one of those fighters for undisputed. Build up your legacy like it ain't fucking already. It's going to be way bigger if you became undisputed light heavyweight. And then you pretty much guarantee yourself a Canelo Alvarez fight. Pretty much guarantee. I would find it hard to believe that Canelo Alvarez wouldn't fight Benavidez if he goes on to become undisputed at 175. I think it's almost virtually impossible the fight doesn't happen if he does that. But him talking about going up to cruiserweight, right there you're saying the fight's never going to happen. Never. He already said he wouldn't come down to 168, meaning Canelo would have to come up to 175, even though Canelo is the A side. And now you're going to go to cruiserweight to fight Zurdo. I think Zurdo fucking beats him. Zurdo is, well, we know Drunk Irishman. Drunk Irishman, who would win? Benavidez or Zurdo? I know he's going to say Zurdo because Zurdo, to be fair, is a better fucking boxer, has better foot movement, right? Is longer and definitely fucking already has had multiple fights at this weight class and is just going to be more prepared at cruiserweight than David Benavidez, who hasn't shown that fucking kill. So there you go, Zurdo. Doesn't have that killer kind of power he had at 168 when he was a weight bully. Hasn't knocked out anyone at 175. What's going to happen when he goes up to fucking fight Zurdo at fucking cruiserweight? He's going to be a fat fucking, who's the English fighter? Olympian, cruiserweight champion, just moved up to heavyweight. Okoli. He's going to be a fat fucking Lawrence Okoli looking motherfucker. Man, you cannot call yourself an athlete when you look like fucking Butterbean. But that's what he's going to look like. Fucking the Mexican Butterbean at cruiserweight. Just like Okoli looks like fucking the black fucking Butterbean at fucking heavyweight. Like you're literally throwing your fucking career away to do fucking what PBC does. Make fights nobody fucking was asking for. Queensberry Promotions on DAZN right now. Right now? What do you mean right now? You mean Queensberry Promotion is now on DAZN regularly? Or you mean there's a fight card right now? And here you go. So obviously we already know the result. Pacheco, Mimbili, Charlo, and Skull. I'm happy that he's fighting Skull, to be fair, because that was a great PBC card. What was a great PBC card? Oh, really? Really? I don't know what great. Okay. But I'm glad it's not Charlo because, I don't think Charlo deserves a big opportunity right now. That guy is just a typical unprofessional PBC fighter. He can't fucking go to rehab, get himself fucking straight. He can't fucking focus on his career. He'd rather just continuously fucking fall off the cliff. Right, Lily? Don't worry, I'll feed you soon. Lily's like, come on, man. I'm hungry. Feed me, bitch. Now. Soon, baby, soon. I promise, sweetie. I promise. But, yeah. I definitely think he does not deserve the fight. William Skull at least has a title at 168 pounds. And as I said, I do think Pacheco and Mimbili, I'd prefer if they were fighting each other or somebody similar to build up that fight and make it far more interesting and intriguing moving forward. But we'll see. We will see what happens. But at the end of the day, obviously we know, Lily knows, that Canelo Alvarez, like Mexican boxing number one knows, Canelo Alvarez moves the sport. It's ironic he came on a video of me talking about how Canelo moves boxing and talked about how I'm shitting on Canelo Alvarez. Lily, can you believe that shit? I can't believe that shit. He ain't a real Mexican if he's saying that. Because a real Mexican fucking supports Sean Newton's boxing. Right? You ain't fucking a Mexican if you don't support my channel. Rick says, years ago, Jamel, I always thought was the more talented Charlo brother. Yeah, me too. His win over Derevchenko was sweet. Yeah, he is definitely the guy that beat Derevchenko the most convincing. Far better than Golovkin, Danny Jacobs, Munguia, and for sure fucking Mbili. Do you feed your dog raw chicken leg quarters? No. Should I? Tell me why I should. Is it going to help her age more gracefully? Because if it is, maybe I'll do that from now on. I'm a city boy, so unfortunately, I feed my dog like I feed myself, and that might not be a good thing. But gaming TV, why should I feed my dog raw chicken leg quarters? What if it's black chicken? Because Taiwan, we got a lot of black chicken. You like black chicken, Lily? Or only that pink white chicken? Lily's like, I don't care. Just fucking feed me. Yes, I feed my dogs raw chicken leg quarters. It's natural. And is it good for them? Thoughts on White versus Joyce? I saw that was just announced. I think that's a great fight. Definitely a crossroads fight for those two motherfuckers. And I would not be surprised to see Joyce beat the piss out of fucking Dillian White. But it's a fight I want to watch. Do you want to watch it? What do you think? Don't look at me like that. She's frustrated. Okay. I think it's time I feed her. Thanks everyone for jumping on. I will see you next time. Peace out. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. And we will be doing more boxing this week. I'm getting back on the saddle. So let's go for a ride.